Hello everyone. In this video we will draw from inside out the muscles of a thorax, consisting of two groups each with 4 muscles, and the muscles of the abdomen, consisting of 5 muscles. We start with the proper thorax muscles. We draw the musculus transversus thoracis finely as 6 fingers from the sternum to rib 2 and 7. Next, we have the intercostal muscles, which basically completely fill the space between the ribs. The musculi intercostalis intimi and interni run from the upper rib dorsocaudally to the lower rib. In the dorsal 1/3, the muscles become connective tissue-like and are called membrana intercostalis interna. The musculi intercostalis externi run from the upper rib ventrocaudally to the lower rib. The muscles fill the dorsal 2/3 of the intercostal space and the membrana intercostalis externa the ventral 1/3. Now we draw the anterior thorax muscles. The musculus serratus anterior originates from margo medialis and inserts into rib 1 to 9. For that, we draw the finger-like insertions by starting with a reverse Z and continue it to rib 9. Next, we have musculus subclavius from rib 1 to clavicula. Then we have the origin of musculus pectoralis minor from rib 3 to 5 and the insertion in the processus coracoideus of the scapula. And finally, we have musculus pectoralis major, originating from rib 1 to 7, a medial portion of the clavicula, and a part of the aponeurosis of the lateral muscles of the abdomen, which is represented by this line. The insertion is more lateral than the previous muscles in the Crista tuberculi majoris. Note that all the origins of the latest 3 muscles have ribs with an uneven number and that the number increases with each muscle. Lastly, I mention the other 3 groups of the thorax muscles. Muscles of the posterior thorax, consisting of musculi levatores costarum and musculi serratus posterior superior and inferior, the diaphragm, and the accessory muscles of the thorax, consisting of musculi scaleni and musculus sternocleidomastoideus. For the abdominal muscles, we start by drawing some additional structures. Rib 11 and 12, ligamentum inguinale, reaching from spina iliaca anterior superior to tuberculum pubicum, and linea alba, reaching from processus xiphoideus to Crista pubica. Now we start with the lateral abdominal group. The musculus transversus and obliquus internus have, to put it simply, the same muscle-bone connection. We draw it by starting next to the linea alba with rib 7. Then we go towards rib 12 via the fascia thoracolumbalis to the crista iliaca, and finally from the lateral part of ligamentum inguinale and falx inguinalis back to linea alba. The falx inguinalis, also known as conjoint tendon, is a aponeurosis or a white tendon for the musculus transversus abdominis and obliquus internus. For the musculus obliquus externus, we also start next to linea alba and go to rib 5 to 12. The 5 cranial fingers interdigitate with the serratus anterior. Then it goes without being connected to fascia thoracolumbalis to the Crista iliaca. And after that, the musculus obliquus externus becomes the ligamentum inguinale. Because the ligamentum inguinale is a thickening of the caudal part of musculus obliquus externus abdominis. It turns inwards, creating a groove in the inner wall. Now to the posterior part of the abdominal muscles, which consists of musculus quadratus lumborum. It originates from rib 12 and, as the name suggests, from processus transversus L1 to L4 and inserts into the Crista iliaca. Because of its shape, the muscle has the word quadratus in its name. The musculus rectus abdominis makes the anterior part of the abdominal muscles. It originates from rib 5 to 7 and processus xiphoideus and inserts into the corpus of os pubis. Now we will talk about the cross-section in the abdominal region with a focus on the abdominal muscles. The musculus rectus abdominis and its sheath don't just lie in front of the ventral insertions of the lateral abdominal muscles. The rectus abdominis is wrapped by the insertions of the three muscles. So here we have the rectus abdominis, and on each side we have the three lateral abdominal muscles. The aponeurosis of musculus transversus and a part of the aponeurosis of the musculus obliquus internus run behind the rectus abdominis and create the posterior wall of the rectus sheath. The aponeurosis of the obliquus externus and the other part of the aponeurosis of the obliquus internus run in front of the rectus abdominis, creating the anterior wall of the rectus sheath. Finally, the anterior and posterior walls of the rectus sheath merge and connect with the other side to create the linea alba. This arrangement of aponeurosis applies to the abdominal wall above the linea arcuata. The linea arcuata is a horizontal line 2 cm below the belly button, marking the caudal end of the posterior wall of the rectus sheath. Below the linea arcuata, we have the following arrangement. All aponeurosis of the three lateral abdominal muscles go in front the rectus abdominis and continue to create the anterior wall of the rectus sheath. The posterior wall isn't there anymore. For completeness, I will mention the layers that attach to the abdominal muscles from the outside and inside. From the outside, we have the fascia abdominalis investiens, the tela subcutanea, also known as subcutis and to some degree as Camper's fascia, and finally the cutis. From the inside, we also have 3 types of layers. The fascia transversalis, a thin layer of peritoneal fat, and finally the peritoneum. Now I would like to talk about the muscle-bone connections of the Crista iliaca, since there are a few muscles that are connected there. We start by drawing spina iliaca anterior superior, posterior superior, and Crista iliaca. We have a ventral view on the drawing. Then we draw 2 additional lines so that the Crista iliaca is subdivided into labium internum, linea intermedia, and labium externum. Here we have the fossa iliaca, and on the dorsal side we have the fossa glutealis. The musculus iliacus is connected to the fossa iliaca and is really close to the Crista iliaca. In the ventral half of the 3 subdivisions of the Crista iliaca, there are the muscle-bone connections of musculus abdominis transversus, obliquus internus, and obliquus externus. On the dorsal part of the labium internum, we have the quadratus lumborum and the erector spinae muscles. On the dorsal part of the labium externum, we have the musculus latissimus, and more posterior to it, parts of the origin of musculus gluteus maximus. On the edge of labium externum to fossa glutealis, on its ventral quarter, we have the tractus iliotibialis and musculus tensor fasciae latae. In the fossa glutealis itself, we have the origins of the gluteal muscles, which are close to, but not on, the labium externum of the Crista iliaca. Lastly, a quick summary. The four thoracic wall muscles consist of musculus transversus thoracis and of the three intercostal muscles. The anterior thorax muscles are the musculus serratus anterior, musculus subclavius, musculus pectoralis minor, and musculus pectoralis major. Now to the abdomen. To put it simply, the three lateral abdominal muscles run from the caudal edge of the rib cage via the fascia thoracolumbalis to the ventral half of the cranial edge of the pelvis, which is made of the bony Crista iliaca and the fibrous ligamentum inguinale. They cover the, except for the vertebrae, bone-free abdominal area. In the posterior region, there is the musculus quadratus lumborum, and in the anterior region, there is the musculus rectus abdominis. Alright guys, that's it for the muscles of the thorax and the abdomen. Thanks for watching and see you next time.